Alright, we are back. Now today we will discuss about the integration process of authentication server in HySecure gateway. And for that, let's log in first on our gateway by using our security officer account, that is a user. And okay, so here we go. And okay, so I have logged in here, and now we will start integration of our authentication server. Here your authentication server can be your Active Directory, can be your even LDAP server. So we have multiple options available here during the integration authentication servers. So during integration of authentication server, we will be dealing with these three tabs: HySecure Domain, Authentication Domain, and Authentication Server. So these are three different servers that these are three different tabs where we will be dealing. And during addition of authentication server, you will go with add option, and these are different options that you can integrate over here. So you can integrate your AD Active Directory or LDAP, Open LDAP you can also use here, Radius, SAML Identity, and biometrics. So these are multiple types of authentication options that has been provided. During this video we will discuss about the first option, AD. Okay, and before we just proceed for integration, we need to understand the flow and the how they are interrelated with each other and what is their work, because we have got three tabs. So what is the purpose of adding these three tabs? Okay, so right now I will just give you a basic idea about architecture, like how it has to be worked. Okay, so we will draw a short diagram. So here we have got authentication server which is sitting on the bottom. So let's say that I have created here let's say that I have got multiple authentication servers over here. You can say that I have got AD1, AD2, AD3, AD4. Okay, so I have options that I can add multiple Active Directory server, and this particular section where we are right now doing, this is this tab, authentication server. So here it is your I would say authentication servers, authentication servers. So in authentication server section, I can add multiple Active Directories over here, but which Active Directory need to be used during authentication, that we need to specify at some different place, and that we say it as on second tab, which is your authentication domain. So I would say authentication domain is sitting here, authentication domain. All right, so authentication domain is here. Okay, and this authentication domain will be mapping to your authentication server. So basically in your authentication domain, you will be controlling that what all Active Directories among all these four need to be used during authentication process. So let's say that you want to use only AD1 and AD2 in your authentication domain. You want to use AD1, AD2 for authentication. You don't want to use AD3, AD4. That you can control in your authentication domain option. You can select that what all servers need to be used during authentication. So you can add a number of servers in authentication server, but which server need to be used during authentication process, that need to be actually configured in your authentication domain. Alright, so this is the another level where we are adding authentication domain information we are adding over here. And once we have specified that okay, these are two servers need to be used during authentication process, then we need to identify that which users are going to be redirected for this particular authentication domain, and that information need to be added on your HySecure domain. So this is your first tab. Just let me show you. This is here. So HySecure domain will be sitting over here, and this will be redirecting traffic to your authentication domain. So this will be something like here. This will be connecting to your authentication domain, where your authentication domain has at this moment got like we added earlier, there are only two IDs we are going to specify here. So you can say in your authentication domain we have specified only two servers to be used, and these are two servers, I would say AD1 and AD2. So you would say that AD1 and AD2. So earlier you added 4 server, but in authentication domain you specified that only 1 and 2 need to be used, and your HySecure domain is defining that if somebody is hitting this particular domain, their authentication will be forwarded in this way. So in a server you can create these chains, multiple chains. So you can add n number of servers, and then you can create multiple servers. You can add multiple servers in authentication server. You can add multiple authentication domain, multiple HySecure domain. So something like that. You can say that these two servers has been 4 servers are already added. So you can map another HySecure authentication domain from here, something like that. Here you are creating another authentication domain. Okay, authentication domain, you can say 1. It is authentication domain, it is authentication domain 1. And here you can specify these two servers like AD3 and AD4. So something like that. Here you can specify that AD3 and then AD4, and then you can map this authentication domain to some different HySecure domain. So let's say that it is HySecure domain 1, and then you can map this to your authentication domain 1. Okay, so now it is going to work. If user is choosing during login HySecure domain 1, this request will go to your authentication domain 1, and because domain 1 is mapped to these two active directories AD3 and AD4, your authentication request will be going on two servers AD3 and AD4. But if you are coming through HySecure domain, the mapped authentication domain is here and it has got AD1 and AD2. So request will come to AD1 and AD2, and that is how you can control that exactly on which server your request should be forwarded for authentication purpose. Okay, so just a quick recap. You have to add servers on authentication server, then you have to specify those servers in your authentication domain, and then in your HySecure domain you have to specify your authentication domain where requests need to be forwarded for authentication. Okay, let's see how this needs to be done here. So I have got one server. I will be adding our active directory over here. Here you have two options, but I will choose with active directory. I will say this is my active directory and this is my server IP 10.0.0.0.8. If you have multiple servers, of course you can choose this option, enable failover option, and then you can add all these information over here. So in case if it is down, it can be your request can be forwarded to your other server. Failover can happen. You can specify your active directory port, and then here it is your admin by Indian. Okay, so what is admin by Indian? This is one of your service account that need to be specified here, which will be used to communicate with your Active Directory. So we will be using this account to authenticate your all users with Active Directory. More generally, this account should be your service account, and password should be not changed, and it should not be expired, because in case password has expired or has been changed, your communication with AD will break and your all users login will stop working. Yeah. Okay, so we need to get admin by Indian. Okay, I have got one user, I have got my AD, so I'm going to find my user by admin by Indian. So I will fire a command, query user, and the name, and the user is my user 1. So here I have got, so it is senior user 1 OU India and DC support DC com. So I will put this information over here. So it is CN is equal to user 1, OU is equal to India, and then this is equal to support, and then this is equal to alright, and then this is your base TN. I will just copy here and paste on base TN. You have to enter your password for this account, so I'm going to do that same here. Alright, and then you have to scroll to the bottom, check on test connection. It is saying yes, it is successful, and submit it. So your authentication server has been added. That means you have added one server on this list right now. Let's go on authentication domain to specify that this server need to be used for authentication. Okay, so let's go on authentication domain. Here there is one default authentication domain already created, so let's use that one. If you want, you can create definitely new one, but I'm going to use same one. I will just modify, and from drop down I have got my Active Directory that I have added in authentication server tab. I will specify this AD for authentication. If I want to use another one, I can use another server as at a priority 2. Now there is authorization server option as well, because I want to use same authentication server and same authorization server at the same time, so I will use the option same as authentication server option. If you want to use a specific one, you can of course go with AD1, and then you can use another native one. But because I don't want to do this additional effort, I will simply go same as authentication. So if it is going with AD, then it should be AD as authorization, and if it is native, then native should be used as authorization server. You can control from here. Okay, alright, let's submit here. That means in authentication domain I have specified now my AD which need to be used for authentication, and now it's done in your HySecure domain to specify that this authentication domain need to be used while users are connected. So in HySecure domain you will see that by default first HySecure domain is mapped to your default authentication domain, so you don't need to do anything over here. By default your default authentication domain is already mapped over here, so you don't need to make any change. But what will happen in case if I'm going to create another authentication domain, let's say if you do, I would have added one more. Let's say I would say that I want to add another authentication domain, let's say that test account. Then in that case I will say that okay, this is my another domain, and the server at first priority will be used as native, and just submit it. Alright, if I will go now in HySecure domain, of course there is only one, but now I will get two options, that which one I want to map over here. Sending user request, that is here I will get two options in HySecure domain configuration. I will get two options like this one and this one, where I should connect, here or here. So If it is 1, by default it is going to connect to your default value only. So I'm going with default value 1. I'm not going to change that, and I will remove this entry because it is not required at this moment. Okay, alright. So we have integrated your AD, then we have integrated, we have mapped your AD to your default authentication domain, and then we have mapped your authentication domain in your HySecure domain. That was for integration of authentication server. Uh, for the rest of the things will be coming in next video.